Hello, I'm John. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the top 7 nonfiction books that I read in 2024. So to be clear, these are not books written in 2024. I don't think I read a book written in 2024, or probably not within the last 5 or 6 years, come to think of it. So these are all mostly older books. And the first one is The Good Years by Walter Lord. He wrote A Night to Remember about the Titanic. And this is about the years 1900 to 1914, mostly in the United States, or having to do with the United States. And this was really good. I was worried about it going into this because I don't find that time period of American history very interesting at all. It tends to bore me. A lot of practical, pragmatic people doing practical, pragmatic things. And so I was thinking that this probably wouldn't be very good, or rather that I wouldn't like it. But I liked it a lot. And so every year is broken down into a chapter, and every chapter deals with something important that happened that year. Suffragettes, women's right to vote. They have there was anarchy and unions and all that kind of thing, strikes and strike breaking. The murder of William McKinley and the rise of Theodore Roosevelt. He picked a different event for every year. Some years there are multiple events. One of the years there was some kind of like a run on the banking system, which I didn't understand that chapter at all. So I was just lost that whole chapter. It was still interesting. I have no idea what was going on. At one point, the United States took their fleet and painted them white and sent them around the world to stop in ports and things like that. It's called the Great White Fleet. And I think that's why in old cartoons the battleships are white, because they used to paint them white. Kind of a weird thing. Let's see. There was a lot going on in this book. I wish I remembered it better. And I'll probably have to reread this sometime in the future. It's just really good. Really, let's see. There's the Wright brothers with their airplane, of course. Now these chapters aren't too descriptive. The dash to the pole, so I guess that's about the North Pole. Anyway, I don't remember exactly what happened very well, and to be honest, I still don't find this period in American history to be particularly interesting. But I really like the way that Walter Lord writes, and I'd like to read his other books too. I'm not sure how many he wrote, quite a few. The next book is The Reluctant King, The Life and Reign of George VI, 1895 to 1952 by Sarah Bradford. I really, really liked this book. I really like George VI as a subject. There's a lot that he and I have in common as human beings, clearly not our station in life or whatever. Very, very good man. He just wanted to live with his family quietly off to the side, and it didn't work out that way for him at all. I did a really long video about this book, which is really not about this book. It was really more of a video essay about George, and I just really enjoyed this one. That was before I had really started to understand how to make these videos. This was the only biography that I read in 2024. And, that kind of bothered me. I thought that I had read more, and I intended to. So I'm probably going to try to read some more biographies in 2025. Now, this was a little bit dry, but I still really liked it. You had the troubles with his parents, the troubles with his brother and Mrs. Simpson. Just a really good book. World War II popped up, and just kind of popped up there. But anyway, it was really good. I really liked this book, and I'd like to read more about George VI one of these days, and about the Duke of Windsor. Steve Donahue recommended a book. I think it's called The Windsor Story, so I'd like to find that one of these days. Yeah, so that's the only biography I read in 2024, and it turned out to be a really good book. The next is In a Sunburned Country by Bill Bryson. I always want to say In a Sunburnt Country, but it's In a Sunburned Country. And this was really, really good. I really like Bill Bryson as a writer. I like his travelogues. I think this was a really good one. Personally, I liked Notes from a Small Island better, but I think maybe that's because it was the first of his books I ever read. This was really good. Bill Bryson went to Australia in the 90s, and he just loved Australia. He was just in complete awe the whole time. He wandered around, going from one place to another. Really, really good book. And it was free of... You could tell that he really liked Australia because it was completely free of his... I don't want to say mean-spirited observations. Sometimes he could be kind of mean about some of the people he ran into and some of the things that he saw. I think he thought that it was funny, and I don't think that it was things that he would have said out loud. I think they were just things that he thought and then he wrote in the books. But that didn't happen in this book. I kept waiting for it to happen, and it didn't. I was really surprised by that. I just really, really enjoyed this book. It was really good. One of his better books. And I think a really good starting point if you want to try Bryson's books. Let's see. The next book is The Morro Castle, Tragedy at Sea by Hal Burton. And this was wild. I mean, everything that happened in real life, it could have been like a big 70s drama, you know. Well, of course it happened in the 1930s, but it would have made a good 70s action thriller movie. I don't even know exactly where to start with this. So the Morro Castle was a cruise ship that went from New York down to Cuba and then back. It's kind of a pleasure cruise. People would get on it, have a good time, get really drunk, that kind of thing. And so there had been little fires breaking out on the Morro Castle, and nobody really understood why. I'm trying to do this from memory, so forgive me if I get this wrong. They sailed down from New York to Cuba, and supposedly there are a lot of little things going on. Maybe they were running guns into Cuba. Now, on the way back, the captain died, and the executive officer took over. And on the last night of the cruise, there was a fire in a linen closet, and the ship caught on fire. They didn't have the right firefighting equipment. Something was wrong. The pumps didn't work or something like that. The ship caught on fire, burned into a hulk, and it was right off the coast of New Jersey, I think. And all these people jumped overboard. If I remember right, the crew abandoned the ship mostly and left the passengers to kind of deal with it on their own. I'm trying to I just read a book about shipwrecks, so I'm trying to keep those separated from this. And so a lot of people died even though they were right on the coast and they could see the lights of town. And I wonder if I could find that picture. There's a picture of the Morro Castle after it burned out. And it sat off the coast for quite some time. And there was a big trial about this. They thought that maybe one of the crew members had started the fire. And if I remember right, he went on later to... That same crew member went on to kill somebody, I believe, and start more fires. So they're not really sure if he actually burned the Morro Castle or if it was an accident. It's just a really good book. I don't know how accessible this book is. It's from the 70s, but I just really like this one here. So next we have The Mighty Hood by Ernle Bradford, The Life and Death of Britain's Proudest Warship. This is about HMS Hood, which was destroyed by the Bismarck in, I believe, 1940. I just really like this cover. I bought this book for the cover. I really, really liked it. And I was surprised that this was as good as it was. So the hood was built in the 20s, I believe, or it was finished. Let's see, it was laid down in 1916. It was finished, I think, after the First World War had ended. And this is just about its journeys between about 1918 and when it was destroyed by the Bismarck. And then the Bismarck, of course, was destroyed a couple of days later. Just a really good book. I really enjoyed this, and I wish I could do a better. Let's see. It was destroyed 24th of May, 1941, with 3 survivors. There used to be, or I think it still is, there's a video. Well, there's a video of the Bismarck and the hood. I can't remember which ship the hood was with at the time. Now, the Bismarck was with the Prinz Eugen, and the Bismarck was the newest battleship in the world, basically the most advanced. It was huge. And so then you come into like naval terms, and the Bismarck and the Prinz Eugen crossed their T basically, so that the hood and I always forget which ship the hood was with. I think it was with Prince of Wales, right? I always want to say it was with Royal Oak, but I think it was with Prince of Wales. So the Bismarck and the Prinz Eugen crossed the T of the hood, which means that they could bring all their guns to bear on the hood. And was it the Prince of Wales? It's not going to tell me. It's going to leave me hanging. Okay, so anyway, I think in something like 7 minutes, the Bismarck destroyed the hood. Or, well, it's a kind of a disputed area. I think they may have solved it, but I'm not sure. So either the Bismarck hit the hood in a very vulnerable area and blew it all to pieces at once, or else there was an accident in one of the powder magazines that blew the hood apart. Anyway, this was just a really good book. I really liked this, and I don't know if, you'd have to be into ships, because it is mostly just about the ships sailing from one place to the other and getting painted and going on a tour of the world, and some of the captains and that kind of thing. It's just a really good book, and I really like the way that Ernle Bradford wrote it. So, let's see, we have 2 more. Here's Platoon Leader by James R. McDonough. I really like this book. This is a memoir of his time in Vietnam as a lieutenant. He was sent to a small little village in the middle of the Strategic Hamlet program. So he's, I think, 22 years old. He's in charge of 100 some odd men, all these weapons, artillery, that kind of thing, or he can bring artillery to bear. And just out in the middle of nowhere, in charge of, men he's never met, and brand new to war. He was only there for 6 months. Apparently that was the norm. And it was just a really good book about he was very, very open about the mistakes that he made, and some of the mistakes he almost made, some of the things he did out of fear. It was just a really, really open account, really, really good book, really well written. He went on to have a really distinguished career, and both in the military and out of the military. I can't remember exactly. I wish I could, but he had a really, really interesting life. He went on to be, I want to say he was the head of the prisons in Florida, and he may have worked in the Reagan administration, but I'm not 100% on that. It's been a while since I read his biography, or, just his little, on the internet I read about him someplace. And this is just a really good book, a really interesting book about, what is it like to be 22 years old and to be making these life and death decisions every day and trying to gain people's trust and all of that. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. And the last one is Rocket Fighter by Mano Zeigler. I read this, I want to say I read this in May or April. Really good book. So Mano Zeigler was a test pilot, and in Nazi Germany they had come up with this rocket fighter It is an actual rocket. It's the ME-163, and it's little bitty. It's tiny. I think it's 11 feet long, and they would put it on this little launch pad. The pilot sat cramped in this cockpit. On one side he had a chemical, on the other side he had another chemical. Both of them incredibly caustic. One of them would basically melt him alive, and the other one would catch on fire. So very, very dangerous. No landing gear. It would go up, shoot up into the air, and zoom around. I mean, it had a very high top speed. They would try to send them up to shoot down B-17s and B-25s and that kind of thing. But really, they were too fast to be useful. They would shoot by them, and they couldn't really bring their little guns to bear or anything like that. They tried to outfit rockets on them and that kind of thing, and nothing really worked. After that, they would run out of fuel and have to glide back down and hopefully land without killing the pilot. And this is his account of being a test pilot, of his friends that he saw killed in crashes or, maimed for life. It's, like I said, it was a caustic chemical. So if you wrecked this little thing on takeoff and you had the tank beside you, it would literally dissolve the pilot. This was just a really short book, and these always have such nice little covers. It was just a good book, and I don't know what else to say about it. It was well written. It was interesting. I just liked it. And Grammaticus over at Grammaticus Books actually did a video about this in Rocket Summer, I believe. So I'll leave a link to his video. It was a really good video. I enjoyed it. It was just a good book. And, I had a really hard time actually coming up with this list because I read a whole lot of nonfiction this year. I didn't realize it, but I read loads and loads of nonfiction. Quite a bit of it before I got on BookTube. And so there are a few more books that I'm going to show. And they just didn't make the top 7 list for whatever reason. But they were still really good. So here is Iwo Jima by Richard F. Newcomb. I really liked this. These are just accounts of both from the American side and the Japanese side of what happened on Iwo Jima. And, of course, these books like this, along with their covers. Now, I had just read the Iliad before I read this book. So I read this through the lens of the Iliad. And I'm pretty sure that Richard F. Newcomb had read the Iliad quite a few times because it mirrored, or this book sort of mirrors the Iliad in style. It's kind of hard to explain, but it was really good. I enjoyed that too. Here is From Bauhaus to Our House by Tom Wolfe. This is Tom Wolfe's attack on modern architecture, basically, and the architects that he thought were overrated and useless, and their buildings that he couldn't stand. And now the reason this didn't make the top 7 is because I wish that Wolfe had spent about another 100 pages with it. I wish he had given some examples of, I wish that he had gone and talked to people who lived in these houses and worked in these buildings. He really didn't do that. He just kind of said, this architecture sucks, these architects suck, and I'm going to write about it. And I just wish he had spent a little bit more time with it than he did. It was really good, though. And I had tried to read the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test before I read that, and I just didn't click with that at all. But I really like From Bauhaus to Our House. Here is Autumn in the Heavenly Kingdom, China, the West, and the Epic Story of the Taiping Civil War by Stephen R. Platt. I really liked this book too, but it was just more information than I wanted. So, I lost interest for about 100 pages before the book ended. It was just a whole lot of detail, and I really wished that there had been more information about the Heavenly King. So that kind of took away from the story for me, but that wasn't really the point of the book. The point of the book was how the Western powers handled this civil war in China. This, I think it was 10 years long, maybe maybe about 11 years long. 20 million people died, maybe a little less, maybe a lot more. They're not really sure. Very brutal, merciless war about a man who had a mental breakdown, started to see himself as the Son of God and the brother of Jesus Christ, and started basically a cult that went up against the royal family of China, the ruling family. And just a good book, just too much information for me. Here we have Warriors at Suez by Donald Neff. Eisenhower takes America into the Middle East. So, I don't remember exactly what happened in this one. I remember that President Nasser of Egypt wanted to nationalize the Suez Canal, and the British and the French and the Israelis were really mad about that. So Anthony Eden, he's right there. Right? Yes. Anthony Eden and I can't remember, well, they're all right there on the cover, but they all kind of conspired to attack Egypt and prevent the nationalization of the Suez Canal, and Eisenhower found out 24 hours beforehand. I'm doing a really poor job of explaining this, but this was a really interesting, really good book, and I really liked this one. It was, very interesting to me because I don't think I've ever read a book about Egypt or about the Suez Canal, so I really enjoyed this one. So the last book is The Great Mutiny, India, 1857 by Christopher Hibbert. There is Christopher Hibbert. I read his book about the French Revolution quite a long time ago, I think when I was 16, and I really liked that, so I was glad to be, getting back to a book by Christopher Hibbert again. This is really good. So the British had created an army of Indians, of Muslims and Hindus and Sikhs, and through various things, through ill treatment, through sort of rumors about the kind of tallow they were using on their rifle cartridges, there was a great deal of anger, and rightfully so. And on top of this, you have the upper-class British who have come to India, who are treating the Indians miserably, but are also somehow convinced that the Indians love them and they would never harm them. And so they had, they basically partied right up until this mutiny. They just lived in kind of a delusional state right up until the mutiny, where people started getting killed. And so there was a lot of information in this book about, all these different towns and villages rebelling against the British, a lot of people being hacked to death and all things like that. And it was just more than I personally wanted, but I thought it was a really well-written book, and I liked it. So those are the best nonfiction books that I read in 2024. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.